Good morning, brothers and sisters and friends. Welcome to the 5th edition of our new series of Facebook presentations. My name is Anthony Naccarato, and I'm proud and privileged to be the New York State President of the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America. We are a 115-year-old national organization that was founded in 1905 to promote our culture and heritage and to assist deserving charities. Today, our New York State Foundation and I are especially proud to present to you a most positive, informative, and entertaining presentation. Our special guest is Lou Gallo, a past Commissioner of Social Justice Chairperson and a very informed student of the true life and accomplishments of Christopher Columbus. Lou is also a retired social studies teacher, which lends itself to the marvelous presentation that he will present today. You will be educated, entertained, enlightened, and perhaps more importantly, proud after you have seen this unique presentation, which he has ingeniously developed himself. Good morning, Lou.
Good morning, Tony. Good to see you.
Good to see
Glad
you,
to
Lou.
be here myself.
Well, I'm glad to have you on. I've seen this show before, and I know that everyone that's tuning in right now will have a wonderful time listening to your presentation. You've given this presentation throughout the county and throughout New York State, haven't you?
This is my 76th presentation in the last 7 years.
Well, you keep track, so I'm going to, you can use all the time that you can require, so I'm going to step out of the picture and I'm going to leave you to your presentation.
Thank you
Good
so
luck
much.
to you.
Good stuff. Good to see
Good
you.
to see you, Lou.
All right. Okay, everyone. Good day. You are going to be exposed to a program that I developed, about 7 years ago, and it's about Italian culture and history. I must tell you that there's a lot of stereotypes about Italian Americans, and there's a lot of defamation through print, cinematic, and broadcast media. And my intent today when I developed this program really was to celebrate Italian Culture and History Month. And one of the lodges I must give credit to is the Columbus Lodge in Farmingdale. My good buddy Keith Wilson said, well, you're a history teacher. Come up with something that most people would like to hear about, as far as celebrating Italian Culture and History Month. So I came up with History in a Box. And one thing as a social studies educator I can tell you all is that two things stimulate interest in that subject. One is controversy, and the second one is curiosity. That's why I have a box here, so that no one sees what I have in that particular box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out various artifacts out of this box. Each of the artifacts have a particular story behind it. Each of the artifacts in succession have a story, and each of the stories are connected. Now, if I can get a sixth grader to pick up what I'm trying to do in 5 to 10 minutes, I'm sure you could do it in our viewing audience as well. And as a result, you will have pretty much an understanding of what I'm driving at, and all I do is I embellish it till the very end. Okay? So I hope you're ready. Stay tuned, because I'm going to draw the first artifact. And here it is. The ancient Romans came to realize that if you took sand, lime in the foothills of Rome, volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius, and Mediterranean seawater, and you mixed it all together and let it sit, it got very, very, very hard. Scientific researchers have found that this particular product created by the ancient Romans created 2 more minerals within a concoction. To get a little technical, it was aluminous tobermarite and philipsite. What these 2 minerals did was to make this even harder than what you come to realize. Today, most of us use Portland cement. It's more porous than what the ancient Romans used. And the ancient Romans had a name for it. And here's the name. Cimentum. And if you take a look at that word, you see an English word that is derived from this Latin expression. And of course, you can clearly see it says Cement. This was a universal product. You see this in your patios, you see this in your driveways, you see this in buildings. Is it any wonder why the Colosseum that is in my background right now has lasted for thousands of years? It's all because of cimentum. They also use it in road building. As you know, the Romans created an empire. And as a result, they needed to actually reach the various frontiers of the Roman Empire. So they needed a very good network of roads. And so what they did was they would trench out a particular distance of about 4 feet deep. And then after they dug it out, they would kind of curve it. It would be curved so that it would drain, and then there would be a drainage ditch along the side. In that particular trench, they would put compacted sand, they would put crushed rock, and then they would put some gravel, and then the gravel would be covered with cimentum. And then what they would do is they would take more sand, more gravel, put more cimentum on top of that, and then set in the cimentum at that point these long, flat stone slabs that smooth out the road, and you would have a road. And this would go out to the various reaches of the empire. Now, of course, you've heard about the Appian Way. I'm sure you know some of those roads are still in existence. And I'm sure you know that this particular cimentum, some of the ruins are still in existence. The Colosseum is still in existence. It's all because of this ancient Roman product called cimentum, which we see every single day of your life. You see it, like I said, in your patios, you see it in your buildings, you see it in driveways. It's a universal product. And for that, cimentum, we have to thank the ancient Romans. All right, what else do we have? Here it is, folks. Il cucchiaio. In Italian, we call it il cucchiaio. Yep, this was pretty much a common utensil in Roman households. Now, you can go back to the ancient Egyptians because they used to use gourds or shells or even bones to kind of scoop out or to sip things, okay? And even ivory. When the Greeks came along, they actually made this out of bronze. But when the Romans came along, they made it in silver and they attached a stem, a silver stem, to this particular item. And that's it, as you see it right now. Il cucchiaio, the spoon. Now, while we're on the subject of Roman households, take a look at these innovations. You see these every single day of your life. You use il cucchiaio practically every single day. So without a doubt, these are universal products, and you see them every single day. The table, the rectangular table. I'm on a rectangular table right now. The folding table, especially those of you who play cards. I'm sure you've seen that. The round table, very common in schools, and detachable panels. When, for instance, a company would come over, you would spread out that table, you stick a leaf in it, you close it. Guess what? It was a common household item in Roman households. And then, as far as the silver product of il cucchiaio, I can tell you that much of the rich and the well-born were the ones who use it in silver as compared to others. So we have il cucchiaio, thanks to the ancient Romans, in silver. All right, what do we have now? La forchetta. Yep, there it is. Now, you can see it's 4 prongs, but the origin of this was really back, again, in ancient Egypt when it was a 2-pronger. But let me say this to you. This particular item, for those of you, our ladies out there in our viewing audience, you should be very proud because this item was popularized by an Italian woman in Italy. She was very, very, very religious. She became the Queen of France when she married Henry II of France. And when Henry died, their eldest son was Philip, and he was a minor. And so they had to use a regent. A regent is a person that substitutes for the heir once he reaches the age of majority. She became really the Queen of France, this woman. But she had one other great attribute. She was a very, very big leader in the art of fine Italian cuisine. And at her table, you couldn't eat with your hands. She was very, very meticulous about that. And so what she did is she cobbled together all the Florentine and Sicilian chefs that she could find. And they would teach young maidens the art of Italian cuisine. Now, today we have Martha Stewart, Marianne Esposito, okay, and Lydia Bastianich. They're on a TV show, and they do the same thing, cooking classes. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This lady predated them by 400 years, was doing the exact same thing. The only thing is, she didn't have the technology. Who is this fabulous lady? Comes from a very prominent Florentine family. Caterina de' Medici, also patrons of the arts, but she was the one that popularized la forchetta. Men didn't accept it. They thought it was too effeminate to eat with a fork. They'd rather eat with their hands. When you came to Caterina's table, you ate with a fork or else. La forchetta, thanks to Caterina de' Medici. Okay. Now, let's see. Come on, Lou. Now you're going to tell us the Italians invented water? Not quite, but pretty close. Nice and clear, isn't it? Well, this comes from Miller Place. And by the way, the Suffolk County Water Authority has said that I've seen the reports that Miller Place water is very, very good. They don't have too many volatile compounds like carbon tetrachlorine. They don't have benzene or toluene. It's very good. So I guarantee you that when I drink this in the next couple of seconds, I will not die. Potable water, fit to drink. Now, ancient societies actually took the time to try to filter water to make it even purer, just like what we do today. Now, the ancient Egyptians experimented with cloth, actually pouring water through cloth. And as you pour it through the cloth, it was fairly porous, and then you'd have a tub or a basin underneath. And they believed that that's what you could use as far as pure water. Then, of course, there were attempts at desalinization of ocean water. But along comes an Italian physician. And being pretty sharp, this gentleman actually experimented with 3 pairs of sand filters. They were perforated. And without getting too technical about the hydrology, the science of water, actually this water would go up and it would go down. It would go down through these filters. And then at the bottom, there would be a tub or a basin to receive the water. The idea, the philosophy or the science behind it at that time, and I'm talking 17th century, was that any particular harmful compounds would be collected by the sand. They would attach to the sand, and then as it went through the water, it would pass through the sand, it would be purified, and they thought it was safe to drink.
That computer.
Who was this fabulous Italian physician that came up with the experimentation in sand filters? None other than Lucas Antonius Portius. That is his Latin name in educational and scholarly circles. You actually use the Latinized version, but his real name in Italian was Luca Antonio Porzio. This Italian physician experimented with water filtration by the use of sand. And while we're on the subject of plumbing and hydrology, take a look at what the ancient Romans actually used. You see these every single day of your life, ladies and gentlemen. The reservoir, the sewer, the drain, the dam, lead piping. Okay, let's face it, we know lead piping is somewhat harmful, but who had piping in those days? Nobody. The water tank, the water heater, the tub, and the toilet. Where would we be without these devices to help us in our everyday life? So again, a whale of thanks to the ancient Romans for devising plumbing and hydrological devices to make life a heck of a lot easier. Again, you see this every single day of your life. You catch my drift? I'm sure you do by now. Okay, I'm going to read you something now. Okay? It comes from a very famous document. I'm sure you'll recognize it when I read it. And it goes something like this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, those of you know, this is the Declaration of Independence, written on July 4th, 1776, and signed by John Hancock at that time. Well, the one who was actually granted the responsibility to write this document, the chairman of the committee to write the Declaration, was our third president, Thomas Jefferson. And along with him, he had John Adams, Ben Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Now, you have to understand something. This is not to take away from the magnanimity of Mr. Jefferson. Of course, he's an icon in American history. But many of the founding fathers and their generation were very interested in establishing a democratic republic. By the way, very revolutionary for its time, because this was an age of absolute monarchs where they claimed divine right of power from the God as their right to rule. But not people like Jefferson or Washington or that other generation of founding fathers. So they were very interested in how to form a democratic republic, which was something very revolutionary for its time. Well, Jefferson had a neighbor, and this neighbor was a very renowned ambassador. In fact, he was the ambassador and advisor to King Stanislaus of Poland back in the 18th century. He came to this country and he settled in Virginia and became Thomas Jefferson's neighbor, a couple of miles down the road. They struck up a very, very close friendship. This gentleman actually taught Jefferson the art of viniculture, which is the art of winemaking. He actually introduced him to Italian music. In fact, we must give credit to John Adams, who started the Marine Corps band, what we now call the Marine Corps band, but it was a national band, a military band. But when Jefferson became president, he staffed this band with Italians because it was influenced by this great gentleman. And our first military band was really in the 18th century staffed by Italians, not by Americans. And there's a whole story about that. In fact, as those of you know, and I've seen the home, Thomas Jefferson's homestead in Charlottesville, I believe it's in Chancellorsville, Charlottesville, Virginia. If you take a look, it has a name. And the name is Monticello, meaning little mountain. That's exactly where it is. It's on a little hill, a little mountain. All because of the influence of this great man. Please remember, Filippo Mazzei was this famous neighbor who influenced the thinking of Thomas Jefferson. You see, they would have discussions in their parlors and in their taverns about how to create a democratic republic. And one of the things Filippo told Thomas was, Thomas, all men by their nature are mutually free and independent. And from that comment, we get all men are created equal. Filippo Mazzei had a tremendous influence as a mentor to Thomas Jefferson. And you probably didn't know this either. Did you know there were two signers of the Declaration of Independence? One of them was William Parker from Maryland. He was the governor, and his lineage, his Italian lineage, goes back to the 1640s. He became a state senator. He was also a federal judge after the gubernatorial tenure, and he signed the Declaration for Maryland when the time came, a month after they wrote the document. All the delegates began to sign. But the next gentleman is really interesting. Caesar Rodney eventually became the governor of Delaware. Let me tell you the story about Caesar Rodney. Caesar Rodney was a sickly man. He was plagued by asthma, and he had facial cancer. He was disfigured as a result. So he would wear a mask or a veil or even a scarf over his face so as to not horrify people by his disfigured countenance. And so what he decided to do was, he didn't stick around too much at the Continental Congress meetings. He was always sick. He needed help to get out. He needed help to come in. Well, one of the days he was home in his bed sick, and he overheard that the Congress was going to entertain a resolution that they were going to be free and independent from Great Britain. And the rule was all 13 had to agree. Not 12-1, not 10-3. It had to be all 13. The Delaware delegation, they're not so sure. Well, Caesar Rodney, when he heard about this and he knew the vote was going to take place fairly shortly, decided to call. And he rode 80 miles in a torrential thunderstorm, sick as a dog, to Philadelphia. He got there soaking wet, made it just before the vote, and he cast the deciding vote in the Delaware delegation so that Delaware would vote aye for independence. Each state had one vote. If Delaware held out, there wasn't going to be a resolution that they all could commit to become free and independent from Britain. Where would this country be without Caesar Rodney? After all, can you imagine what would have happened in history if Delaware did not go? Therefore, that resolution would have failed, and who knows how that would have affected the course of this country. Now that's an Italian. So it doesn't sound like Paulie Walnuts to me. For those of you who watch print, cinematic, and broadcast media, this isn't Vito Corleone. This isn't The Sopranos, folks. These are the Italians. Everything I've showed you thus far is really what Italians are all about. And we've been doing it for centuries. We've been doing it for centuries. Okay, what else do we have? Well, there's another gentleman. I don't have a picture of him right now, but he was also a founding father. He was from Pennsylvania. He was a printer by trade, experimented with electricity. He was kind of like more of the older part of the generation. He was a great compromiser. When large states argued with small states or slave states argued with free states, this man had the knack to kind of bring everybody together and kind of come to a resolution. Without him, some of the things that happened as far as the Declaration, certain things happening with the United States Constitution and its formulation would have been a lot different without this man. You know, I'm talking about Benjamin Franklin. Like Thomas Jefferson, I don't want to steal their thunder. They've made a tremendous mark on the creation of this country, but he too had a mentor. Now, the interesting thing about this mentor was, you know, mentors usually are the senior people, and the young upstarts are usually the proteges. In this case, it was reversed. You see, Ben Franklin was our ambassador to France when we were colonies. And he would come in contact with a lot of different diplomats and ambassadors in his travels in France and Great Britain. And he met this one Italian. He was only 38 years old. Franklin was fascinated by the man. Such knowledge. In fact, he led the Neapolitan Enlightenment in Italy. The Enlightenment was a period in the 17th and 18th century where Europeans began to think about new ways of understanding their world, the age of exploration under Columbus, new sciences, philosophies, the idea about mathematics by Newton, and so forth and so on. Well, this gentleman led the Neapolitan Enlightenment in the field of government. He was a big, big supporter of civil rights, free speech, free assembly. People have rights. Government is responsible to act according to the consent of the governed. Okay? And so this particular gentleman influenced the thinking of Ben Franklin because, like Thomas Jefferson and others, very interested in creating a democratic republic. How do we do that? Well, this gentleman wrote books on criminal law and legislation in a democratic society. They corresponded quite closely. They became very, very close. And as a result, what happened was Franklin got a lot of ideas about how to create a democratic republic. Who is this fabulous Italian? You don't hear too much about him. His name is Gaetano Filangieri, but he was the mentor to Benjamin Franklin. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, Italian people had, at that time, a lot of inroads and made a lot of inroads in creating our democratic republic and influencing our American leadership. Gaetano Filangieri. Now, let me show you something else what I have here. What else we got in the box? You know what this is. Right here. Yeah, I saved it. Wife was going to throw it out, and I said, no, don't throw it out. I need it for history in a box. It fits in beautifully. Well, if you take a look at the history books, what do the history books tell you? History books tell you that the inventor was Alexander Graham Bell. I'm here to tell you it's not true. That's right, it's not true. I'll give you the story. This Italian, I consider him the Italian Thomas Edison. He was a tinkerer, liked to fool around with things. And he started to experiment with electroshock therapy. And he got kind of a reputation about it. So we got a knock on the door one day. He lived in Staten Island, by the way. And the order does have a home of the Garibaldi Meucci Museum. And that museum, of course, is housing the artifacts of Meucci, this particular individual, and Garibaldi. So he said, listen, I got a pain. You think you can help me? I understand you're experimenting with pain relief. He said, yeah, sure. I'll tell you what we do. I got an electrode for you. I want you to go in the room, and I want you to stick it in your mouth, okay? I'm going to run this wire, and I'll be in another room. I'm going to send a shock, and let's see what happens. So this gentleman sent the shockwave through, and the one guy went, ow! Of course he went out. But here's the kicker. This gentleman didn't hear the ow in the room. He heard it through the wire. So this guy says, wait a minute. You can transport voice in a wire? Oh my God, I got to look at this. And sure enough, he took this wire. He put, it's nothing like this or like this. This is just a remnant of what this gentleman created. All right. It had two cylinders at the end. And you can talk into it. And he realized you can transport voice. And in his basement, he jury-rigged a little system to go upstairs for his wife, Esther, so she wouldn't have to come down. She was a sickly woman. And this way, you know, they could communicate. Well, guess what? The neighborhood heard about it. And when the neighborhood heard about it, they say, could you hook up something like that in the neighborhood? You go, sure, absolutely. So Jerry built this particular system, and there it is. And people in Staten Island are using this device. He called it an elettrotelefono. Elettrotelefono. Okay. Now he gets a big idea. First of all, in those days, if you wanted to protect the exclusive use of your particular invention, you had to get what is called a caveat. At that time, it was about $10. Probably in today's dollars, maybe $50. Now, that gave you an exclusive right for 1 year. But after that, you had to get the patent, which cost $220 in today's dollars. Okay, so it's a little more expensive. So he gets really excited, and he goes to the American Telephone and Telegraph Company. He says, you know what? I want to test this thing. I think it can go long distance. So would you try it on your lines and let me know how it goes? Well, they did. Give it to him. He gave it to them. Went back a couple of weeks later and said, so how'd it go? He said, we didn't do it yet. Okay. He came back again. How did it go? No, we didn't do it yet. Came back a third time. How did it go? We didn't do it yet. You still didn't do it? Comes back a fourth time. This time they tell him, we lost it. You what? You lost my elettrotelefono? You gotta be kidding me. You lost my elettrotelefono. He was horrified by it. So, he happened to be on a Staten Island ferry one day, and it got caught fire, and he wound up in a hospital. And then he found out that Alexander Graham Bell filed a patent for the elettrotelefono. You see, folks, when this gentleman gave the elettrotelefono to the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, sitting on the board of directors was Alexander Graham Bell. Well, when this gentleman heard about this, he sued Bell. Sued him twice. But Bell, having all the dough and all the lawyers, strung it out. He strung it out. He strung it out. He strung it out. Now here is this gentleman in the Staten Island hospital, sick as a dog. They didn't have Medicaid. They didn't have Medicare. They didn't have private insurance. So what did his wife ask to do to pay the medical bills? She went down in the basement and sold all his technological devices so she could pay the medical bill. And therefore, this gentleman could not pay for the patent. Who was this fabulous Italian? And don't you ever forget it. Antonio Meucci, the true inventor of the telephone. He was experimenting in the 1850s with the elettrotelefono when Bell was only 2 years old. How the hell do you give him credit for the telephone? Now, Italian Americans became upset about that. And in 2002, a lobbying effort by some Italian Americans prevailed upon the U.S. Congress. And they got a resolution out of Congress. And here's what the resolution said. We assert and affirm that Antonio Meucci made a significant contribution to the invention of the telephone. Notice they didn't call him the inventor. They called him a contributor. Because in this country, if you own the patent, you're the inventor. That's how Bell got the patent. That's why we called him the inventor of the telephone. And it just isn't true. Antonio Meucci is the true inventor of the telephone. All right, what else we got here? I took this out of my daughter's car. It's a radio. She was going to junk it. See, I always think about history in a box all the time. Now, this is a very interesting development. Because when there was communications, especially transatlantic communication, they would lay these big tables with these big spools. They go from the ceiling to the floor. And they would roll it out into the ocean. And very big, burdensome operation, very weighty. Took a lot of time. They would connect New York with London, London with this one, that the other thing. And a typical Italian, there's got to be a better way. So he starts to experiment with radio waves in the air. And he begins to capture these waves without the use of any wires. Cable operators were furious. Don't buy it. Don't use it. It's fledgling an invention. It's not going to work. People disregarded, didn't believe him. And as you well know, by the 1920s, this particular device became a very popular means of not only communication, but also entertainment. And who is this fabulous Italian? Don't you forget Guglielmo Marconi. And by the way, this invention also led to the groundwork in computerization and radar. For that, we can thank Guglielmo Marconi. Doesn't sound like Paulie Walnuts, does it? Not Vito Corleone, does it? Tony Soprano? Nah. You see, be careful what you watch. Watch that print media, watch that cinematic media, watch that broadcast media, because that's not what Italians are. What I showed you right now is what Italian people are and have been that way for centuries. And don't you forget it, please. What else do I got here? Oh, yeah, every time I use this thing, I don't know. Never seem to
reached 98.6. We probably got to leave it a little longer than that. No, it runs by Mercury. Hey, 94. I'm getting better. I've been down as low as 91. You know what that is. Well, there was a gentleman that experimented in the use of mercury in a thermometer. Folks, 1593. This is not yesterday. It's not 1910. 1593. That's how precocious Italian people are. Who's that fabulous man? Galileo Galilei. 17th century scientist. And by the way, people give him credit for the telescope. Yeah, he didn't invent the telescope, but he magnified it 20 times so he could see Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and all those heavenly bodies. For that and the thermometer, we thank Galileo Galilei. And hey, how about this? Oh my God. Where would we be without this thing? It's a battery, right? Use it every day of your life. It's in your watch, it's in your computer, it's in your all kinds of social media uses it. It's in your car. My God, 1800. 1800. The battery. Who's the innovator and the inventor? Take a look at the name. Alessandro Volta. On that word, that last name, we get the word voltage now, don't we? Another Italian. Okay, moving right along. You know what this is, don't you? Measures the air pressure. Tells you when a hurricane's coming. It's a barometer. 1643. Not 1920, not 1950, not 1892. 1643. Okay? You're talking 300-400 years ago. Who was the gentleman that innovated this particular discovery? Evangelista Torricelli invented the barometer. Now, this I know you see every day of your life. You see this. Traffic light. Where would we be without this today? Give you a story behind it. Did you know in the 1860s, London had trouble with horse-drawn carriages getting into accidents at intersections? Yeah. So this is what was done. There was a gentleman who was a railroad engineer. His name was John Peake Knight. And he applied railroad technology to the control of traffic at an intersection. And the way he did it was, he had this gas-operated device held by a policeman, and he would watch the traffic, and at periodic intervals, they would just change to red, green, red, green, red, green. I had one problem. It leaked. And when it caught fire, it blew up and killed cops. London says, hell with it. We're not going to use it anymore. Well, along comes an Italian. And he decides, we're going to do it this way. We're going to use electric, so we won't have gas. It won't blow up. We don't need a policeman because I'm going to build an automatic mechanism that makes the lights change at prescribed intervals. Who was this fabulous Italian? William Gallieri, San Francisco, 1916. The traffic light that you know today, that you see every single day of your life, is because of William Gallieri. Doesn't sound like Tony Soprano to me, does it? I don't think so. Now, let me dig a little deeper. How about these Italian ladies? My wife. Manja, look at it. Excuse me, a little statue of Manja in there. Oh, what do I got? As usual, every time I do this presentation, I never have time to eat. So what I have to do, I got to go out and buy myself something. So this is what I bought. See that? Yeah, Big Mac. Yeah. Absolutely. Here it is. Big Mac. 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, onion, and pickle, all on a sesame seed bun. Not bad. I'm eating and you're not. Oh, let me tell you. Created by an Italian. Yep. James Delegati, Uniontown, Pennsylvania, 1967. Typical Italian. He saw that regular little thing with the hamburger. What the heck is this? They came up with the Big Mac. All right. Sold billions, as you know. What? Billions sold? Whole bit. This guy lived to be 98 years old and ate a Big Mac once a week. So if you want to live to be 98 years old, eat a Big Mac once a week. He just died 2 years ago at the age of 98. Okay, James Delegati. So when you have your kids or your grandkids, tell them you're going to Delegati's. You're not going to McDonald's anymore. You're going to Delegati's. Because without the Big Mac, let's face it, McDonald's would not have the amount of money that they have now. Okay, now maybe you don't like Big Macs. So I went out and I bought this. Subway. You know, every time I go there, I always order their spicy Italian. It's really very good. So here it is. My spicy Italian, spicy Italian. Yum, yum, yum. Here it is, folks. If you don't like a Big Mac, try this. Really good. Good meat. Peppers and onions. Typical Italian meal, right? Oh! Have to buy another Italian, folks. You see this every day in your life. Big Macs, Subway sandwiches, fast foods, they're all over. Hey, for that, you got to thank Fred DeLuca. Interesting story about Fred DeLuca. He was a college kid in the 60s, 1965. Wanted to go and become a doctor at the University of Bridgeport, Connecticut, where he lived. But as you know, college kids, how am I going to pay for college? What do I have to do? So he says, well, kids my age, they like to eat. So he developed a sandwich like this. And he decided to open up a sandwich shop called Fred's Submarine. Well, it was such a hit, 44,000 outlets later, he becomes a billionaire in the top 30 and creates Subway, changes the name to Subway. He too just died recently at the age of about 67 years old, and he left a wife and a child. Fred DeLuca innovated, created Subway. Popular, right? Maybe you don't like that either. So let's go with a staple. Yeah, you know what that is. I don't have to tell you what that is. But interestingly enough, this hailed out of the city of Naples around the late 19th century. And it was really done as a admiration for Queen Margherita. See, the sauce is the red in the Italian flag, the white is the mozzarella, and the green is the basil. You can get Margherita pizza today. You know that, right? So the invention of this particular food item was to appreciate and admire the Queen in the late 19th century. That's how we got pizza. Okay? It sounds like Paulie Walnuts, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't think so. I didn't think you thought that. Okay, now along comes another gentleman. This broke off a little bit. You know what that is. Okay? It's an ice cream cone. Story behind it, Italian immigrant, 1903. This gentleman is a peddler down on Wall Street. Okay? And he used to put ice cream in a little liquor glass. And people would, eat it. And then it would break. He'd have to quash it. He thought it was just too much work and impeding his business. So he decided to take a waffle iron. He took a waffle iron, and he put a waffle in there, and then he folded it and cooled it so that it came out like that. And you can put the ice cream in there. Don't have to worry about broken glass. You don't have to worry about cleaning the glasses. Beautiful. He called it a tutti, which means everything all at once. That you can walk away. You don't have to stand by my cart. You can go and have a good time for yourself. People used to say, let's go and have a toot. All right. Well, this got to be such a success. He hired 45 more peddlers in the Wall Street area, the financial district. Well, that got to be a hit. Next thing you know, he's invited to the Louisiana Exposition, like a World's Fair in 1903. Completely sold out. Decides to go back to Hoboken, New Jersey, where he sets up a candy and ice cream shop. Does so well with that Shrevs, the candy people and the hotel people, buy him out, and he becomes a millionaire. Not bad for rags to riches. Got the patent in 1903. Now, there are others who have a patent for the wafer cone, but he's the first to have it in this country by an immigrant, 1903, the wafer cone. Who is this fabulous guy? His name is Italo Marchionni. Now, you notice something different there about his last name? It's not an I or an E, it's a Y. Why? Because he wanted to Americanize himself. He was also a little bit of an eccentric because he believed, if you're going to remember my tutti, you have to know something unique about me. Therefore, you will remember Marchionni with a Y rather than with an I or an E. And guess what, folks? As a result of that, the world's oldest ice cream store is in Paris, France. And I had somebody once tell me that it's still in existence. It was founded by a Sicilian. His name is Francesco Procopio di Cotelli, the oldest ice cream store in the world. It's called Procope, and it's still in existence thanks to the Sicilian. And after you eat your pizza, and after you eat your Big Mac, or maybe your Subway, or maybe you have your tutti, guess what? You can sing yourself a song, and it goes something like this. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. The music scale. Yep. Invented by an 11th century monk, Guido d'Arezzo. So that's it, folks. There's a story all about Italian people. Something you're surrounded with every single day of your life. We are inventive. We are creative. We are innovative. We're restless. We always like to improve things. And of course, we've done our best to make life simpler in America. That's the Italian people and who we are. It's not Paulie Walnuts. It's not Vito Corleone. It's these. And we've been doing it for centuries. Those of you who are Italian Americans, I hope you're very proud. Now more than before you saw the program. And those of you who are not, hopefully you can appreciate Italian history and culture a little bit more. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much, Lou. I'm always amazed. I've seen this probably 4 or 5 times, and I never cease to be amazed. Tell us something about yourself, Lou.
Well, I was a social studies teacher, a very committed guy, and for 33 years I taught American history and government in 11th and 12th grade. And I was always a creative type of guy. My wife used to say to me, God, you're 30 years in the business. You're still cooped up in the room. I'm a very restless teacher because unless it works like this works, so I continue to do it. But a lot of times I was a very much a self-critic. And I'd say, I don't like the way this was. I want to do it again. And I want to do it again. And I do it again. And the next year, I don't like it. I'm going to change it again. And allowed me to survive in the profession because I just didn't want a humdrum existence. I loved my job. To me, it was an office of public trust. And I really cared about what I presented. I made sure I presented all sides wherever I could. I believe that the dissemination of information to young people is really important. Sad to say these times, you see a lot more indoctrination than exploration. And as a result, I used to enjoy myself doing it. And I, from the very first day to the very last day, I enjoyed the profession. And what I love about this program, because it does keep me back in the classroom occasionally, which is the way I like it. I always wanted to be an itinerant teacher, and that allows me to be an itinerant teacher. And it also actually forces me to continue to do research because every time I come on, I always find another little tidbit that I can add to the program. And of course, people come to me and say, "Oh, you forgot about art, you forgot about music." I say, "Well, you got till midnight. We can do that too." I just show the things that are in your everyday life. You're surrounded by Italian innovation and invention, people. You just don't realize it. You take it for granted. But that's how much we have made a contribution to civilization in this world. And that's what I find. I think we are truly the people of culture. We really are. It's just amazing how the influences, and it's because of our character, our nature. And our nature is constantly improvement, constantly creative, passionate about life. That's what's great about us. We're passionate about life, and we want to see things better, and we make it better. And here's the whole history tells you we made it better.
Well, I've known you a long time, Lou, and I always know that you've been very passionate about being Italian. Where does your family come from?
My family, the Gallos, come from Calabria, La Provincia Cosenza, in a little town called Fagnano Castello. It's up in the mountains. In fact, if you go high enough in the mountains, so my cousin tells me, you can see the Tyrrhenian Sea on one side and the Ionian Sea on the other. You literally have to, the roads are so narrow that you have to wait for persons to pass before you can continue to go. And my mother's side is Neapolitan. Her mother was from Avellino. Her father was from Salerno. So Napolitano e Calabrese. I'm a combo.
Well, as you know, I was born in Calabria.
And Cosenza too, right?
Cosenza also.
So, who knows? We might have crossed paths, or our families might have.
You know, what we have to do, you and I, Lou, in the late 1880s, six brothers called Naccarato
Really?
went to Idaho, of all places.
Yeah.
They dropped 50 degrees. They went from about 50 degrees in the winter to 0. And they started a town called Priest River, Idaho.
Really?
It's right on the corner of Washington, up in the northeast corner.
Wow.
And everything's Naccarato. Naccarato Street, Naccarato High School. It's the most amazing thing in the world.
Wow. See, Calabrese was very good.
I actually wanted, and what they did is they, as they made some money, one of the brothers went and got a wife. Then he came back and they built a house.
Mm-hmm.
Then another brother went and got a wife. They built a house. And one brother went and bought back a wife for his brother. So he went and got his wife for himself and wife for his brother. Yeah. And to this day, the people from Cosenza. And again, the reason I bring that up is like it was in the late 1880s. People think that Italians came in the 20s and the 30s. But back like in the 70s and 1870s, 1880s, and they came. You know what they came from, Lou? They came to build the railroads.
That's right. Very true.
So mining and building the railroads.
My people come. I actually took the time when Ellis Island's website. You could take a lot off of the website without paying for it, and I did find the manifest, the ship manifest. May 18th, 1896, my great-grandfather Filippo, my grandfather Luigi, my father is, I think his birth certificate says Luigi, but he was a Lewis and I was a Lewis. And Lewis is still prominent in the family. And May 18th on the ship Olympia, they came in steerage. They were both tailors. And my aunt used to tell me, she was a historian of the family, she said, when it came to the art of fine clothing, let me tell you something. The Gallos were it. And, I have two brothers that are like that. They never wear the same thing twice. And they're really clothes hounds. And as a result, were doing very well. I wouldn't say we were rich, but we were solid middle class until my grandfather Luigi passed away at the age of 38 at pleurisy. And, of course, the family went downhill and we had to struggle a little bit to come back to some kind of norm. But it's fabulous. One of these days, if I ever have the time, I do want to do genealogy. I really want to go back. And my nephew and my first cousin, Rosemarie, we did some preliminary investigations and we got the family back to 1798. There are Gentilis and DeCaros and Ambrosios in the family along with Gallo. So I would love to pursue that. And that would be really interesting because I think it means a lot as far as place.
You're also a member of the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America, right. Aren't you?
Yep, absolutely.
How long have you been a member?
Since 2002. member of the Landy Lodge, and then that went defunct. So now we are at the Viggiano Brothers Lodge in Mount Sinai, Long Island.
And you also were the chairperson for the Commission for Social
Yep,
Justice.
that was from 2013 to 2017. I was a state trustee. I was a district chairman of the Lodge District 1 Presidents, which is Suffolk County. It's just great. What I love about the order is there's that ethnic connection. We all have that experience. To me, that's so important, and that's what creates a lot of solidarity in the order. I think that's very important. We have the same backgrounds, we have the same upbringing, and it's just wonderful. You feel very comfortable as a result.
Oh, I truly appreciate you doing this today.
Anytime.
I think the people that watched will absolutely love it. I would like to take this opportunity, and I'm sure you will also, to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I know things are a little bit different this year. Please be careful, but have a great, great Thanksgiving from the sons and daughters of Italy and America, and from Mary and I. God bless you, and please take care of yourself. Lou.
Buon ringraziamento.
Buon ringraziamento. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and enjoy tomorrow. God bless you.